What's Up Yuma with Johnny Porter is sponsored by Yuma and Imperial Valley Wealth Management, offering solutions for those who value financial planning. YIVWM.com.
Chili from Philly. Nick Papa Giorgio from Yuma.
What's up, Yuma? Welcome to another episode of What's Up, Yuma Radio. I'm Johnny.
And I'm Ronnie. Happy Friday.
Yes, it is Friday. Thank God it is Friday. Do people say that anymore? Thank God it's Friday. TGIF.
I do.
You remember when that was big? The TGIF.
Oh, yeah, it was huge. Now everyone's like, whatever.
It was like ABC. There was like a whole lineup and like Full House. And anyway, I'm getting way off a subject. And because we have a doctor in the house that's also an award-winning poet. And so I think we need to go to him. Thank you for being with us, Zach Matteson.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Are you happy it's Friday too?
I'm always happy it's Friday.
Yeah.
I got a lot of grading to do, but I'm still happy.
Yeah. So, we did mention that you're a professor here.
Yeah.
I say teacher. I get used to saying teacher, but I don't think that's the right word for college, right?
Or it's okay. But
it's okay.
We're still teachers, but we're not too, we don't make people call us exactly, nobody has to call me doctor or anything.
If I was a doctor and a professor, I would be Dr. Professor. Like
Dr. Professor Johnny.
You would just have to do that, like the whole thing. I would be so proud of it.
Yeah.
But one thing we like to ask all of our guests is their connection to Yuma. How'd you end up in Yuma?
I've been here just about 2 years. It'll be 2 years in December. And I was just, during COVID, I sort of was in a little bit of a rut. I was helping my mom out with some stuff, and I applied to about 50 different places. And Yuma was about one of two places that got back to me.
Oh, okay.
And so I feel like it was meant to be, honestly. And the other place was a school in Morocco. So if I hadn't gotten this job, I would be in Morocco right now, but I'm excited to be here.
We're all like, what?
That is such a strange thing to say.
I know.
Zach.
I was going to be like Tucson or Phoenix. You're like Morocco.
Morocco.
No,
wow.
It wouldn't have been a lot of money, but it would have been a great cultural experience.
But I heard it doesn't take a lot of money to live there.
That's exactly right. That's why I would have done it for sure if I hadn't gotten this job. But I ended up really loving it down here. My family had been kind of wanting to move out west for a while, and so I just ended up being the first one.
Oh.
Gotcha. So you were a professor already, obviously.
Yes. I've been teaching on some capacity in the academic system for about 20 years. Yes.
20 years.
I know. I know I look like I'm 15. But, yes, 20 years.
Who's this kid teaching?
20 years. That's great.
I know. I love it. It's one of the only things I've ever been good at, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So English professor.
Yes.
So growing up, was that always something you wanted to be? Did you always love English? What was it about that made you want to become a professor?
I loved art and I loved expression, and I actually sort of was just not good enough at any other art. And so when I,
painting and stuff,
right? I didn't have that natural skill to draw, or I felt anyway. Or I eventually got into things like photography and collage, and there's visual things I do like to do, but it seemed like, ironically, that poetry would be the easiest.
Yeah.
So somehow I actually grew up not being a huge reader. Funny enough, I loved comic books. That's
okay. Well, that's cool.
Yeah. So you do. And so like Stan Lee, who created the X-Men and Spider-Man, those were like my favorite. That was my favorite growing up. He's a big inspiration for me. So.
My entire life, I've been asked, how's Archie? And Veronica.
Oh, yeah.
Or how's Betty? I'm like, what?
Yeah, because your name.
Yeah.
So comic books, that gave you your love for it then.
Yes. And I also thought, maybe someday I would write comic books. It seemed more tackleable than maybe writing a novel.
You're the English professor. You should know the word.
Well,
I'm kidding.
You can make
Teach
up
us
language.
words.
I would say you can make up any word you want to.
I do all the time.
Hold on. Wait a minute.
All the time.
My favorite English professor right here. You can make up words. Thank you. I love that.
All languages. Eventually. It really does. And what we think of as grammar today will not be grammar in 100 years. And what was not, singular you is a really recent phenomenon. It used to be maybe 100 years ago or 200 years ago that it was always a plural. We were saying you. So thee and thou would have been the singular, right?
Oh.
And so it's really recent. In fact, singular you is more recent than singular they. Singular they goes all the way back to Chaucer. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So yeah. So these things are always changing, growing. And so
you're like, you know what I mean? I'm like, no. But you're right. Like grammar and language is always going to be changing. I was listening to the radio the other day, and they're adding like dad bod and riz to the dictionary. Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on?
Completely.
So I did a plug for our sister station, KWC 88.9. Do you listen to Away with Words?
No,
No,
I
you
need
haven't-
to. Or maybe I don't think so. but
Oh,
I need
well,
to.
it's on our sister station. You
Okay.
should check that out. It's really cool. It's about words and like how it's developed. And
Maybe I have. I don't know.
Interesting.
I'm bad
Yeah.
with names.
I,
but
I
yeah.
don't know the time it comes on. One of them out there would know. But
Yeah, not us.
I can't give a full plug for it, but it's a really cool show and it talks about English language.
Mhm.
So comic books.
Yes.
You were thinking maybe you could have been a writer for comic books. So
Yes. yeah.
did you also like writing?
Yes, I mean, I love language. I love
Mhm.
community. I'm a Gemini. I'm very typical.
Aw.
Like we like to communicate. We like to sometimes too much. We tend to be
Mhm.
teachers.
there's two of
and
you.
talkers. Yeah, exactly.
My
We-
daughter's one.
Lot to
Believe
say
me, I
then, huh?
know.
Yeah, totally. So no, I always love that. I always love communicating. And I think because I struggled with a lot of learning disabilities growing up. And so also it was hard for me to read longer books. And so
Yeah.
books of poems were nice because you could read that one poem and chew on it, take it, go away, come back later and not
Yeah.
sort of lose anything. And so I think a part of it was honestly by necessity. I just never foresaw myself writing these great tomes.
Mhm.
And I get a lot more satisfaction as a writer, really working on something kind of fine tooth, kind of polishing it down.
Mm.
And I don't know, I lose my my train of thought or my focus really easily. So it's,
So did you like short stories as well?
yes, I do, but I like the shorter the better.
Yeah, the short.
Yeah.
You know,
Quick to the point.
And there are some great ones. There are some really great. Amy Tan's got a great short story called Fish Cheeks, which is one of my absolute favorites that I teach every year. It's just a single page, and it's such a great story.
Wow,
about,
a single page.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Yes.
could do that.
yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it feels that's why I hope my students feel too, you know, is that it's not impossible. And she tackles all kinds of things about like internalized bigotries and
Mhm.
and really overcoming her own insecurities. And it's such a great story. And I teach it every year, but because it's short and sweet and
When I was younger, I loved it as well. I love short stories. My favorite were short stories and the poems of Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, we're doing him later this semester.
Oh,
Nice.
really?
My American Lit class. Yep.
Oh, you're gonna have to
Interesting.
let me know about it.
Absolutely.
Maybe go check you guys out. Yeah. So I love that, and that's what I used to try to write like too, in the different grades, and would have like writing classes and stuff. So I try to write like him, but then you get in trouble. Like, wait a minute, this is kind of dark. You go to the principal's office,
It
like,
is,
and then my mom comes in. It's like he's writing
We're
about this
worried
stuff.
about you, John.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's Edgar Allan Poe. Like I
Yes.
checked it
Yeah,
out from
that's
this
what-
library,
yeah,
you know,
exactly.
like
Totally.
this is where I got it. But so short stories like that's something that you were able to kind of grasp. And did you
Yeah.
start to write any short stories yourself?
Well, actually, we were talking about like dark. Really,
Let's get
first-
dark. It's
Well,
spooky season.
Halloween.
We have to totally, but
Look,
I will
there's
say,
a pumpkin on that calendar over
I
there.
asked
It's
about dead
spooky
bodies
season. Yeah.
yesterday. Like, we can get dark.
Well, once I started to read things outside of comic books, one of the first authors for me was Sylvia Plath, and
Yes.
that's why I really talking about sort of dark poets, and she
Mhm.
really was. And I remember I didn't even know that much about her. I had this feeling I had to go find her, and I went to the library. I got her first book, and I just read this one poem, Daddy, over and over and over again, like 16 years old. And
Do you remember it?
I used to have the whole thing memorized.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. You do not do any more red shoe in which I've lived like a foot, poor and white, barely daring to breathe, red shoe. Daddy, daddy, I've had to kill you. It
Wow.
opens up really intense.
Wow. I just got chills.
And the whole
I literally
thing,
got
yeah.
chills.
Like, that's the opening line.
I think I misquoted just a little bit.
That's all
but
right.
no,
That's all
I
right.
love
We
her, I
wouldn't
love her.
know.
She's great. She had an unfortunate, tragic life, but she came to her ultimate fruition right towards the end of her most sort of mental illness, and what we had left over was just this kind of amazing sort of. And again, she was the one that really took it out of maybe the written page onto performance, because she really started to have these sounds like you could hear when I was just saying that that you do not do.
Yeah. Had that
Okay.
Kind of inspired things like which would eventually become the slam movement. And I don't know if she
Wow.
gets total kind of credit for that, but I mean, she's not the only one, but certainly also in the way where she was so honest, and especially about women's lives and mental illness and being a mother and the struggles of having a spouse who cheats on you and all the things. She didn't hide from any of that. And so I found that book, but I just read Daddy over and over again. And then now I'm a little careful when I actually, I'm breaking my own rule. I'm a little careful. I don't always say that she's one of my inspirations, because people do get nervous in the same way you
Oh,
say
yeah,
with
okay,
Poe.
yeah.
You know, they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Or they think, oh, you think you're Sylvia Plath or something. I'm like, no. Absolutely.
She's just inspiration.
Yeah.
Totally,
Then there's
absolutely.
nothing wrong with
Do you
that.
teach her? in your class?
I taught her last semester, but we have a big preface and we talk about it. And because, I want to make sure that the students, we can work through some of those darker themes in a way that's safe and healthy.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I love her. I mean, her mastery of language. Her husband, who's also a famous poet, Ted Hughes, he used to call her process as she would collect sounds. And so when you go into the poems, you can see how, and here's another ooh, here's another ack, here's another, that was her process. And so she was a huge inspiration for me. So Stanley, her, and then funny enough, in the 90s, it was Tori Amos.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Because her weird lyrics. Now, again, not everybody loves her. She's wailing and screaming and saying words in weird kind of ways that you wouldn't expect, and absolutely loved her. So those are my three kind of big hitters growing up.
Those are your inspirations. And you mentioned, and you mentioned, she was kind of the inspiration for slam. And we were talking a little bit off air about slam. And I asked you if that's something you got into. No, you appreciate it.
Yes.
But can you explain to our audience what slam poetry is?
Yeah, and I'm probably not the expert on this at all. It has a whole long, interesting history. But it's basically, there's competitions that happen all over the world. And it has a lot more to do with the performance aspect of the poem. And so it may not be just something that's meant to be on the page, but something that's really meant to be performed and moved and to hear the tone of it, and it becomes almost like a monologue or like you're acting. And so it's just not
it's a little bit more theatrical. Yeah, there you go. Theatrical. There we go. That's the word I was looking for.
Which I love. And but I'm intimidated by it because it's not what I do. But it's amazing. And I love how it's all kind of now intermingling, and we're all kind of, I wish we taught more about performance and sort of the sonic aspects of written poems in a more traditional academic setting, because I think that actually is missing. We could learn a lot from slam.
Would you ever have your students do like a class of slam poetry?
Oh, yeah. They were actually, there's been already a lot of talk about having a regular student slam meeting here. So they came
or like
to
an
me
assignment in your class.
Yeah. No, that's a good idea. I guess I worry that it's like, it's not what I would normally, but no, I'm totally encouraging.
Do you worry like that's not your deal? Like
your
that's
style.
not your, because you kind of mentioned that there's people that know more, but still it's kind of fun, the theatrical part.
Completely. No, and when I read, and I'll read one of my, at least my poems a little bit, I do get a little bit into it. I think you should. I think you should get a little bit into
Stand up, grab the mic.
Your Meryl Streep moment. Whatever.
Or I hear your alter ego. Maybe your alter ego can go perform.
Yeah. Because it sells the poem too. And because I think that's what I will say, I do include these aspects in some ways. Sometimes the student will come and they'll read their poem and they read it in this very lackluster way. And I'll say to them, it's a good poem, but you're not convincing me because the way you've read it, you have to read it with conviction. You have to read it like it's the best poem. And it may not be, but we'll be convinced by your conviction of it. And so there's a lot of that in slam that is really powerful. I mean, slam can also kind of be a little bit less, you don't necessarily have to be as tight in a form. And so there can be more free flow. It can be more like, there's their own flows and rhythms, just like in hip hop or whatever, but it's maybe not connected to classical forms that we would be having to learn and write and then teach in for years in the academic setting, which I don't necessarily recommend, but I did it,
and we talked off air a little bit, as well as one of the other cousins of poetry is spoken word. And what's that?
Yeah. And that's a little bit different just because I think it's maybe a little bit of a broader category. Anything can kind of be spoken word. You can have, maybe not anything, but you can certainly have like a one-person show, or you could have, I was saying like Henry Rollins does spoken word, where
I love Henry Rollins, by the way.
Him. And he's got a great sense of humor. He's really fun.
So if I don't wear a flannel, I typically wear a black shirt, just like he always did. It was like one of my big inspirations. Yeah.
But there's comics, I think, kind of would do something that might be considered spoken word. It's more where you're telling a story and you're sort of leading us, maybe go back to even like that oral tradition kind of vibe. But they're definitely all overlap. And I think nowadays too, we're getting Amanda Gorman, who was the poet laureate for Biden, I believe. She has these amazing, this real nice mix where when she performs, you can even see her movements as she's talking, and it leads you into feeling it. And it's always there with also a musical moment. And so it kind of feeds on itself, and it really it's very impactful. And I was really inspired by her. Yeah.
And before we go to a break, the last one we kind of talked about, we didn't get into, was songwriting. How does that play into songwriting? So
I am a songwriter, and songwriting for me is, it's a different process. I don't know for everyone. And there's been some amazing poet songwriters, Leonard Cohen or Joni Mitchell, many, but
are those some of your inspirations?
Oh, I mean, Joni Mitchell to me is like quintessential, like one of the tops. I can't. But I mean, Otis Redding. I was really obsessed with 60s Soul when I was a young kid, and cool. I don't know where that came from, to be honest. I drove my family crazy. I mean, at a very young age. Do you guys remember how you used to be able to do the Columbia CD thing?
Yeah,
get like a 20 CDs for a penny or whatever?
All that, yeah.
So my sister, my sister was 3 years younger than me. Even when we were kids,
I have so many CDs from them.
Me too. So she was getting like contemporary, like TLC and No Doubt, right, or whatever, Gwen Stefani. I was getting Dinah Ross and the Supremes' Greatest Hits.
So cool.
As a child, and Otis Redding and Aretha Franklin's Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You, I was in the woods out camping with my family, like, you can't hurry love, like living my life.
So
they're
cool.
like, what is going? You just have an old soul.
It's really true.
I really do.
I am, and I've never,
I can see it.
Never understood where that even came from. But these are all my inspirations anyway. But yeah, but those singer songwriters are amazing. But for me, it's a different process, because the when you write a song, the music has it creates tone colors that are in addition to the words, and you don't have that in poetry. So poetry has to be able to tell you everything it needs to tell you on the page, or hearing it, but it doesn't have this music to tell you how you should feel emotionally about any given moment.
Like a score for a movie, right? Like that gives you that, okay, this is the emotions you should be feeling right now in this present scene.
Totally. And you can be surprising, right? Because you can have really like sad lyrics with a really upbeat sound. Yeah. And it will have a nice kind of contradiction. But in poetry, you kind of have to, everything has to work, at least my own standard for myself, is it has to work on the page. First and foremost.
Sense.
So thank you for taking us through all that. We're going to take a quick break. And I know before we go, you got some poetry you're going to read for us. And I want to dive into a little bit more on the poetry side when we come back. All right. With that, we're going to take a break. You're listening to What's Up Yuma Radio right here on 94.7 KOFA Border Radio.
What's Up Yuma is sponsored by Yuma and Imperial Valley Wealth Management, offering listeners a one-on-one, no-obligation consultation to review their current financial affairs and provide strategies for meeting future goals. More at yivwm.com. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
What's up, Yuma? Welcome back to What's Up Yuma Radio. We are here talking to award-winning poet, Professor Dr. Zach Matteson.
Very
Thank you
smart
again.
Guy.
Yeah, all around.
I'm learning a lot.
Get a little closer to the mic if you could.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And then maybe
falling.
I think it fell a little bit or something. There you go. It
We
happens.
always have mic problems here. It's all good.
Yeah.
Is that better? Oh, no, maybe this one.
Okay.
Yeah, we're good. We're good. You're closer. So okay. Before we left, I said we're going to get into poetry. I love poetry.
Me too.
I end up going from writing poetry in class, like the Edgar Allan Poe, to being a rapper. That's how I got started in this whole business. I was an MC for a while, and so words and lyrics are very important to me. Very important. And I liked being able to play with words. So that's why I said you're my favorite English professor now, because you play with words inside of that. So do you do the same in poetry?
In my poetry anyway, there's always some playful element. And it can happen in sometimes in subtle ways, even in just the where you break the line. Something will happen to that line that it will change when you get to the next line. And there's something that happens in your brain there that is really rewarding, I think, when it's done really well. It can be overdone and just like anything else. And you can't always hear it. It's kind of a trick of the eye. But line breaks are really important to me. Absolutely. Well, I have a whole weird system of like numerology that goes into my poetry, which no one will even know from reading it. And it's fine. It just gets me to the poems, you know, where I have certain numbers that are really important to me. They come back over and over and over again. 14, because that's my favorite number since I was a kid, is 14. And I didn't find out until years later that it's also the number of lines of a sonnet. And so if I get to 14 lines, I feel like, okay, I can at least take a breath. And I don't know if it wants to be longer, but I can create something complete in 14 lines always is my goal. So, but 7, and then somehow like, 3 chunks of 7 is 21. I've got all these weird like rules that don't make any sense to anybody else.
But it gives you, it sounds like it also gives you some structure for when you're going to go face, because it could be daunting to write. It's like, it's tough to sit there and it's like, well, I know if I do this 7 and then I can get this 7 and then get that, and you can tackle it a different way.
Completely. And that's what I tell my students about form, is that form will sometimes feel stifling. It'll feel like I have to somehow fit this into this specific structure. But what form should be doing ideally is like, if you imagine yourself as a creative person not knowing how to create, you're kind of in outer space, not being able to move because you can't push off of anything. And so form is that wall to push off of. And once you push off of it, you can let it go if it doesn't serve you anymore. But you have to, that's the form, that's what it should be doing. And if it's not doing that, then it's not, But also, when I give my students challenges or a prompt or something, find a way into it that's creative and that's not the way I thought. It's fine. There's no one way to get there. So I love when they kind of blow my mind. It's like, come, there's no right or wrong here. We're just playing around.
That's what's so awesome about creative writing.
Absolutely.
You just get to do what you want.
Yeah.
So there's no right or wrong, but poetry, isn't it typically supposed to rhyme? Like, break down the differences, because you brought up a sonnet and the different forms. Like, I know some don't rhyme, and go ahead.
Rhyme is a really big part of sort of the modern Western canon. Different traditions do employ a lot of rhymes and some don't. There's certain forms that sort of traditionally would have a certain pattern of rhyme, a rhyme scheme as we'd call it. And so like a sonnet has a sort of traditional rhyme scheme. And what's nice about that, like with Shakespeare, is that because he was oftentimes playing and performing to audiences who were maybe less educated, or he was wanting to really overemphasize the important moments. And he would do that with the rhymes. He would, even in his plays, because all of his plays are written in iambic pentameter, which they're all poetry.
I didn't know that.
Even the dialogue,
no idea.
Even the dialogue, to be or not to be, all of that is written in iambic pentameter, and in chunks of 14. It's wild. And that's because, again, what's amazing though about poetry, this is what I tell my students just yesterday, is that it's one of these deep human things that we have used for centuries in order to bring a knowledge with us into the future. Because you think about like the Odyssey or the Bible, even, or any of these ancient texts, these were oral traditions. The reason that we could remember these huge tomes, like the Odyssey is like 2,000 pages or something, right, is because it was all written in poetry. And those rhythms that were, you could, even if you couldn't remember the next line, you'd know it has to be this because there's a certain rhythm. And you'd have these old men around the fires or whatever, men or women, sitting, memorizing these whole tomes because of the musical aspects of it. So the poetic aspects. So, it's deeply human. And I think it goes back about as far as language does with humans, poetry.
Wow.
So how did you become an award-winning poet?
Well, I have won a couple contests. I have to say, it's not something, the whole trying to get into the competitive aspect of it is kind of frustrating. And that's 10 contests after me sending out maybe like 30, 40, 50 thing. You know what I mean? So but I could just put it on the resume. So it's nice. For sure. Two times it's happened. So multi-award winning. I mean, we can,
Absolutely. What were the awards?
There were contests at the time. My very first publication, actually, I won an award. It was an undergraduate contest, and they published, which is the first poem in my second book. And then the second one was a contest in Canada where they give you a certain prompt, and I just had the one that came out on top, I guess. So
congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. It's nice. But it's not something I strive for, or not get into it.
But it is nice to win the competitions and have that, again, like you said, on your resume.
Yes.
Like ego and self-confidence boost. Like you are good at what you do.
Yes, exactly. And and I've been published in about 25 different journals and publications. Nice. So that's nice too, to sort of.
That was my next question. That's perfect.
Yes.
He read your mind.
Mostly, individual poems or small little collections as they publish them in like literary journals or magazines. Probably my biggest like print run was, I think, the Gay and Lesbian Review. I got it has thousands of print runs. That was probably my biggest one. Yeah, it's when I worked really, really hard. I will say I have a pen name. My pen name is Sugar le Fae.
Sugar le Fae.
So
Yes.
I didn't know how to pronounce the Le Fae part. So
Yes.
when I
Let's
saw
dive
in your
into
bio,
that.
Yeah, so it's interesting because Zachary actually, my given name Zachary is I went on a study abroad trip many, many years ago, and I went to Greece, and the teacher said to me, "Well, you're going to hate this, but Zachary means sugar in Greek."
Oh.
Zachary. And I said, "Well, you don't know me at all because that's awesome." And all the girls
Well, let me tell you.
Yeah, all the girls
am
on the
sugar.
trip. Right. Yeah, I was like, it was this revelation to me. And all the girls on the trip started to call me Sugar as a joke. And it just ended up sticking. And so now what's funny is I had been trying to get published for about 10 years under my given name, and I could not get traction.
Yeah.
And then
Really?
when I
Oh,
started
yeah.
sending out a Sugar, all of a
sugar
sudden
is
it
like
changed
people
the
love
game.
So
sugar,
many
huh?
people have
I think
fake names.
Zach.
Yeah.
I love the name Zachary. It's a great
That's a
name.
great
It's got
name.
a
Yeah,
but
Z and
Sugar
a
le
Y,
Fae is
but
amazing.
that's it's not going to be boring, right?
You're gonna be like, what is this?
Right.
Like, is this who is this?
Yeah.
Exactly. And so actually it was just Sugar for a long time.
Okay.
And then when I first was getting into teaching professionally, I was starting to have students try to find me on social media.
Mhm.
And I didn't want that. I wanted the separation of that, the
Sure.
professional and that. So I changed it to Sugar on the social media.
Mhm.
And at the time it required you to have a last name.
Yeah.
And so on a whim, I thought Morgan Le Fae, like the famous Arthurian character, who's a sorceress and all these things.
Oh, wow.
No idea, but
Yeah.
okay. If you
Yeah,
I'll just pretend. I'm like, yeah, sure. Yes, that
yes.
sounds amazing.
She's this amazing character in Arthurian legend. She's Arthur's half sister, and she's a sorceress, and she's kind of evil, but
Wow.
but it means of the fairies essentially. So Morgan Le
Oh.
Fae, and so Sugar Le Fae.
Sugar of the Fairies.
Of the fairies, yeah. So
Wow.
I'm actually a part of where I identify with this larger group called the Radical Fairies, and it's a group that was founded in, I would say, in sometime around maybe the late 50s in San Francisco, by a guy named Harry Hay, and this early group of LGBTQ activists called the Matteson Society. But the basic idea of it anyway is just moving away from wanting to celebrate and be sort of radically accepting of yourself and others.
Oh,
So that's
okay.
the fundamental idea of it. And anybody can be a fairy, actually. You think it would have to do with the sexuality, but it doesn't. I know many straight fairies, and it really. I used to live with I used to live with the first straight male fairy empress of New Orleans. Shout out to Clay.
What up, Clay? What up?
and then what part of that culture is that you also get fairy names.
Okay.
And so that's where Sugar was also kind of, I had been introduced to fairies. I really wanted a name, but I wanted like the universe just to bestow it on me. And so then when I went on this trip, then it's kind of happened, and it was a nice magical
Can I
thing.
ask why you called it the mustard seed?
So
and what is that? Because let's give reference to it. You have 2 books
Yeah.
there
Yes,
or something?
yes.
Okay.
Yep, 2
Lines
books.
So we got about a minute and a half
Yeah.
left.
Oh,
So
okay.
you've got 2 books there. Both of these are your originals. Like
Yes,
this
these
is
are all
your
originals,
books.
the Mustard Seed and Broken Lines.
Okay.
And the Mustard Seed is called that because it was actually a verse memoir. I was working at a grocery store, which had another name like the Mustard Seed, but I changed that so I wouldn't get in trouble. And then I wrote this kind of
lawyers, yeah.
sort of book about my time there.
Yes.
And so this first one is a verse memoir. I'm going to actually read that for my second one because I just thought this would be a nice kind of radio friendly.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can end with that. Yeah.
And so this is from my second book, and this is more, instead of this, my first book was this verse memoir. My second book was more kind of a collected works over 20 years. And so these poems kind of represent my journey over 20 years. This one is called Patience, and it was inspired by just the fact that mammals and humans included have these kind of superpowers that we got because when the dinosaurs kind of took over, we all had to go nocturnal. And there's something called the nocturnal bottleneck. And that's why we all have, like, in general, mammals have great vision and hearing and warm blood and all this stuff. It's our superpowers. So that's what this was inspired by. It's called Patience. Once when we were mice, still scared of the sun, we lived among dinosaurs. Every night we drank the cold rain from their footprints, browsing nuts and bugs. We slept through thunder, fire, hailstorms, woke on worlds of fallen flowers. Moonlight ripened us, rounded us to wheels of cheese. Darkness warmed our blood. Back when we were mice, we slept in dens with our friends, licked each other clean. Because our bodies made heat, milk, fat, fur, we lived. We could wait our turn.
All right.
Wait, let's snap.
Oh, we snap.
We snap at the poetry slam.
That's a beatnik
Thank
thing.
you guys
Yeah,
so
that's
much.
right.
I love it.
That was
No, we do that in
awesome.
poetry class too.
You doing poetry? Okay, cool.
Snap,
Thank you
snap,
guys so
Yeah,
much.
That was
thank you for being with us.
beautiful.
That was
Thank you.
great. Thank you so much. We're definitely going to have you back on,
Please,
dive in a
yes.
little bit deeper.
Oh, that
I'm
was
glad we had you. One of my favorite shows so far.
Yes.
So thank you so much.
Thank you
and
guys so much for having me.
with that, we are going to take a break. We'll be back with Stevie Dub, and maybe he can end with a rhyme or something because he is a
Yes.
rapper. So
Today's
maybe.
performance
maybe
day.
you can
Yes,
perform
love
first
it.
a little
Can't
bit.
wait to hear it.
All right. With that, we're going to take this break. You're listening to What's Up Yuma Radio right here on 94.7 KOFA Border Radio.